You got Mac and Mac here. Jody McDonald and John McMullen on Birds 365. Appreciate your streaming on in and hitting us up with your comments on the stream. A couple of interesting ones today. I had the comment via Twitter last night on my show on WIP, John, which I thought was interesting at first, but then the more I thought about it, I said, yeah, no, that's too much. Get your take on it. You mentioned him earlier, Sneed, who you said you don't necessarily think would be a fit for what his price tag is going to be for the Eagles defense, that he's kind of like some of the guys down in Miami who played under Vic, who weren't happy with the way he used his secondary because that's just not his system, playing a lot of press corner and up in guys' faces. And that is certainly part of Sneed's game. But he's just an all-around talented player, too, who I think if you put him in a zone defense, a Fangio-type defense, would be really good at it. It might not be his favorite. It might not give him the chance to show off his skills because he's as talented and varied a player as he is, but doesn't mean that he would fail it, and I think he'd be very good in it. Is he worth $19 million to just be a Fangio corner, though? That's a legitimate question. So someone ran this by me last night. And I was surprised the Chiefs did that. Let me start there. Were you surprised the Chiefs let it leak out, or they planted the information, whatever? Don't know how it came down, not close enough to the situation. They would think about throwing the franchise tag on Sneed and then turn around and trading him, which is certainly better than, that's why anyone who suggests, we can get Sneed via free agency. He was never seeing free agency. There was no way the Kansas City Chiefs were going to let him walk out the door and get nothing in exchange for him. That was overly optimistic. We can sign him as a free agent. No, you can't. He's never going to hit free agency. So they said at least the report said, they could tag him and trade him. Is there any way that a trade for Sneed for Hassan Reddick works? Because the Eagles are in the same position with Hassan Reddick. Go out and check the market. We'll see what we get in return for you in a trade. Could a trade between the Chiefs and the Eagles for those two players work?
I'm trying to think about it. I don't think so from the standpoint of one, the Chiefs have some pretty good young pass rushers. Now, the one kid got hurt. I don't know how serious it is, but obviously Karlaftis is kind of turning a corner. We know how much they're going to pay Chris Jones. It's going to be astronomical. Now, he's an inside player, but still, you're talking about, remember, I always talk about these things don't happen in a vacuum. You got a budget, you're spending a lot of money at that particular position and all that kind of stuff.
And they're not spending it at that position. They're spending it on other positions, but the Chiefs aren't paying anybody coming off the
defensive
edge
line. Defensive line is what I'm talking about. Okay. So you have to and again, I should say defensive front for all the what's on the stream. I'm talking about edge players. I'm not, he's a Sam linebacker. Those idiots. But you get my point, Jed. I don't think it's a fit for either side. I think the Eagles are too smart to bring Sneed in the Vic Fangio's defense. I think. Now, how he likes to make splashes, maybe he takes the assessment you just took. It's just a good player. You put a good player in any system, he's going to be a good player. But I would put, and I know this for a fact because he's told me, Nick Sirianni thinks the best cornerback in football is Jaylen Ramsey, the most talented cornerback in football.
Sirianni says this?
Yes. It don't get better than Jaylen Ramsey. Now, he's getting up there, I don't know, it's the 7th, 8th year. Maybe he's not at the height of what he once was, but he is a big-time talent. I mean, no offense to Sneed, he's not Jaylen Ramsey. And He didn't like playing in that defense. I don't think L'Jarius Sneed's going to like playing in this defense because of what he does well. And I go, you can go all the way back to Nnamdi Asomugha. You bring in a player at 19 million, say it might even be more than that, but say $19 million a year, whatever. You bring it, the expectations ramp up. He's got to be one of the best corners in football. How do you be one of the best corners in football when you're not doing what you did in Kansas City? And he was given the opportunity to make plays, and he was given the opportunity to stand out in coverage and shut people down. How do you become a player worth $19 million? I think it's raw. I did a thing for Sports Illustrated, pits and misses for each position of need. Austin Eckler, I had in there as a miss for the reasons we just talked about.
Yep.
Sneed, I had in there for these reasons I'm talking about. Not a fit here. Great player. I'm not trying to insult the player. Just not a fit here. So I don't like it from a number of different directions, but I don't think either team would be interested in adding. Well, one of the reasons the Chiefs are looking to tag and trade Sneed, they want something obviously back, but they have their own crunch. They don't want to lose a 19 and bring in a $25 million player. So I don't think it fits from either direction.
Understood. But one thing you said was really interesting to me. I'd never heard this, that Nick Sirianni was outspoken that Jaylen Ramsey was the best corner in the National Football League. So if Jaylen Ramsey heard that, wanted to play with Nick Sirianni, what would Nick Sirianni do? Say, yeah, sorry, yeah, I know you're the best cornerback in football, but you can't play in my system because I'm a Fangio guy. I believe in not giving up the big plays. I believe in zone concepts. Sorry about that, big guy. You may be the best cornerback in the league, but you can't play for me. Would Sirianni really do that?
Probably not. Everything.
Then why wouldn't he do the same thing for Sneed?
Because they're not the same. With all due respect to Leger, they're not.
Yeah, you know what? They're not the same on the birth certificate too.
Yeah, I mean, he's not.
If I can take one of those two guys for the next 4 years, I'm taking Sneed.
That's fine, but yeah, he doesn't think of Leger. He thinks very highly of Jaylen Ramsey, very, 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 very highly. As in, and bring up somebody else. He thinks more of Jaylen Ramsey than he thinks of just about any other cornerback, even his own cornerbacks, which he would never admit in public. But he thinks he's the best cornerback in football.
But is that not weird if Sirianni, and he has steadfastly said, even when Gannon went out the door before they decided on Desai, we this is the way we play. I believe in don't give up chunk plays. And he signed, sealed, and delivered. We're sticking with this type of system, zone-based, heavy zone, not worried about getting up and pressing guys in the coverage. If he feels that strongly about defense and the way you should deploy your secondary, how do you like a get up in their face, check them on the line of scrimmage?
Well, he wouldn't be the first guy. As I often point out, he often contradicts himself in the same press conference.
And I'm sorry, Nick, if it's my job to point out when you do come off as a hypocrite. Sorry, Nick.
There's certain guys, and you bring it, and he, when he talked about it, and you're right, he is getting older. That's why I brought up one of the points. When he was in with the Rams and you had Aaron Donald and Jaylen Ramsey, you had the best defensive player, the best defensive front player, you had the best cornerback in football at the same time, which rarely happens. When you have different, that's kind of my point. There's certain guys, I covered one of them, was Randy Moss. You can compare other wide receivers during Randy Moss's era. They're not comparable. They're good players. They're not comparable. Jaylen Ramsey's in that category. So with all due respect,
no, he's not Randy Moss.
Yes,
come on.
He is. Amongst NFL players, he is. And that's what I'm saying. Amongst NFL players, NFL coaches, boy, I get the feeling you don't understand how much they value that talent of Jaylen Ramsey. Yeah, he's different. He's different. So it's not a comparison from that standpoint. As far as, and again, I'm not picking on L'Jarius Sneed, but yeah, I don't think he's a fit as a zone corner. I think Jaylen Ramsey could play it and be effective as he did with the Dolphins. They were a completely different team when he was on the field versus when he was off the field, because he was injured early in the season with the meniscus. They were when he came back, they were a completely different team, which is rare with a cornerback. And he didn't like it, and he's still good at it. And that's the thing. They might not like it, but they could still be good at it. There are other guys who are, all right, that's a press corner. That's a zone. Bradbury's a zone corner. If you ask him to press, good luck. Then you got, everybody's complaining. He got dusted by so-and-so, by Puka Nacua, and the rest actually good coverage, but I was laughing at people. You don't ask people what they don't do well. You ask people what they do well, but there are certain guys that can do everything well. Doesn't mean they're happy with it. I just go back to Minkah Fitzpatrick when he got traded from, ironically, the Dolphins to the Steelers. I remember, because Malcolm Jenkins was still here, and I tell this story all the time. Malcolm loved that Jim Schwartz let him play different positions. Loved it.
Yeah. Different guys have different ways.
He took it as a challenge. It kept him engaged. He just enjoyed it. And the Dolphins wanted to do that with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Minkah was like, I don't want to do that. I want to play center field. And there's guys who just have different mentalities and look at things in different ways. And boy, I see. And if Sneed comes here, he's a good player. I'm not trying, but the expectations, Jody, I think it would be a disaster. I really do. In this scheme, I think it would be a disaster.
I just wanted to run it by you, but that does surprise me. Apparently you're in lockstep with Nick Sirianni.
Well, part of the reason I'm lockstep
so far is to comp him to Randy Moss. Randy Moss, first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't even know that Jaylen Ramsey is a Hall of Famer, certainly not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Jaylen Ramsey isn't the cornerbacks in his era what Randy Moss was to wide receivers in his era. Neither you nor Nick Sirianni can convince me of that.
He's only been playing for 7-8 years. So I'm talking, would you have said the same thing with Randy in his 7th season? If I would have said, so he's in, it's different. Now we know the hindsight. So what does he play? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 seasons of Jaylen Ramsey. 7 Pro Bowls, 3 All Pros, 2 second team. So 5 All Pros. I mean, yes, he is. He is the preeminent corner of his generation, which is right now. He is the preeminent corner of this generation of football. Now, part of it is that he bounced around, and that also happened with Randy. Randy started in Minnesota, then he got angry about a certain something, and he had I think he went to Oakland, I think burst, and ultimately, so he started bouncing around. And people would hold that against him. Jaylen has bounced around a little bit because he's had issues. But as far as on the field, man, I wish you could hear people discuss him, because I think it would change your sentiment.
Not even close. Randy Moss is the second best receiver in the history of the national.
Oh, I agree with that.
I don't believe when his career is over and done with, if you tell me that he's going to be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year in year 9 with a new defense coordinator down in Miami who may just come in and go, yeah, whatever you want, Jaylen, we'll build the defense around you. Not happening.
Well, nobody's building.
Even if they did that, I don't think he's going to be a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. So there's no way he's getting in the Randy Moss neighborhood.
Randy was not. Guess what? Adrian Peterson, and I covered that team. Adrian Peterson was the MVP. Randy Moss was never the MVP. Randy Moss is more of a generational player. He plays a position where you can't build an offense around a wide receiver. The Eagles did. And by the way, A.J. Brown, you can see the difference between the Eagles offense with A.J. Brown and not A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has talked to me about every great corner in football. And A.J.'s the kind of guy who's got so much confidence in himself. He thinks he can beat anybody. And I'll ask him about particular corners in a particular game. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it's basically like, nah, he's not that good. He's not that, not Ramsey. He's like, yeah, he's good. He's good. So hey, part of it is the way coaches and players talk about the player. I always say, and it could be different levels too. Randy's an all-time great. I'm not trying to dismiss Randy. I'm with you. He's the second best wide receiver ever lived. The people in Philadelphia think Terrell Owens is better than Randy Moss. I laugh at them. Not that Terrell Owens was a bad player. That's not even a comp in my mind. So I think very, very highly of Randy Moss. And no, what I put, part of it is that cornerbacks have changed. They're more gifted today, but the game is different. So they can't be as dominant as old school corners because they're not allowed to be as dominant. But if you can play press coverage today, you're probably better than anybody in the past because the athletes have gotten better and all that kind of stuff. So it depends how you framework it. But there's no question he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. There's no question Jaylen Ramsey is going to be a Hall of Fame player, barring an injury and he's never played again. And he might even be a Hall of Fame player now. We can ask when we get our buddies on. They'll talk about longevity, but there have been guys, whether it's Terrell Davis, Tony Baselli, it might take them. They didn't have the long careers, but they were so dominant in his short careers. He's going to keep playing. So there's no question he's going to be a Hall of Fame player. Yeah. I mean, if you want to go Randy, Randy's better than just about everybody. So I guess, yeah.
No, I didn't go Randy. Better. You went Randy. I didn't.
Well, because I talk about people. Aaron Donald. I tell it all the way. Same way.
Aaron Donald, first ballot Hall of Famer. Jaylen Ramsey.
Talking to Brandon. But guess what? Michael Vick. Players talk about Michael Vick in awe because of his skill set. When players talk about other players and they're in awe of them, I take notice. That doesn't always be at the level of Randy or Aaron Donald, but I take notice when they respect other players to the point where it's over the top, because that's when you know somebody is super, super, super good and super talented. Now, did Michael Vick live up to his talent? Probably not. And there were some obvious issues. But, people talked about him the same way. And those are the guys I'm talking. Jaylen Ramsey's in that category of guys other players are in awe of. And that speaks very highly to me, to say the least.
Well, then that should, at least in part, worry some Eagle fans, because if Jaylen Ramsey is that good and commands that kind of respect, he's spitting all over Vic Fangio. He can't do enough of it from down in Miami.
Well, there were a lot of Miami. I mean, talented corners don't want to play zone. They don't. The guys who can cover don't want to play zone. They don't. So if you're going to play a heavy zone scheme, I think it's a waste of time to go get it, because the guys who get paid at the top level, those are the press coverage guys. And look, you can do it. And some of them are so good, they'll make it work to a degree where it's certainly going to be serviceable. And that's where we started with Sneed. Maybe Sneed is that guy. Maybe he is. It'll be serviceable. but for the expectations of a $20 million corner,
right.
$19 million
If you're going to
corner,
pay him, then that means the Eagles aren't going to pay anybody this year at cornerback. They may cling to Bradbury, which, again, I was surprised yesterday with how he said. I know he was just about to get off the podium. He didn't really get in depth, and the answer that he gave, his in-depth part of it was more kind of like making excuses for Bradbury that, oh, we had him in the slot, which wasn't really his position. He's more of an outside guy, and maybe that's on me because I didn't give him enough bullets in the slot that the coaches felt they had to do that. But then he finished up with, yeah, he's part of the team. He's part of the team. That surprised me that he went down that road, that he was committed. Now, you and I say this all the time. How he can change his mind tomorrow? He was committed on February 27th. James Bradbury's part of the team. Doesn't mean on March 3rd that he can change his mind and go, well, he's not part of the team today. We're going to do something else, or the leading up to free agency or the draft. So he's not one of my favorite McMullen-isms. He wasn't under oath yesterday. So he's not going to be held to that. But I was just surprised that he went there, that on this given day, he did say he's part of the team. So you're telling me, John, don't expect the Eagles to go out and sink any significant money into cornerback unless a guy is a definitively good defensive zone corner. That they're not going to pay above market for.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying top of the line. They might draft a corner in the first round. They pay Darius Slay. They pay James Bradbury significant money. It is a position of value for them. I think Howie's too smart to pay, again, the number one corner on the market, undoubtedly. At the top level, which is going to be $19-20 million minimum, might even be more. I think he's too smart to pay that kind of money to a player whose main skill, his best skill, is press, and he understands what the scheme is. That's my opinion. And you just have Jaylen Ramsey and Zabe. That's why I brought up Jaylen. And Xavier didn't say it. Jaylen said it, so I won't blame Xavier Howard. But he's similar. He's a press corner. He's been a press corner. And evidently they didn't like it. Jaylen certainly didn't like it. The Xavier, I don't believe, liked it as well. And there have been other players as well from Miami. But I think he's too smart to go in that direction. Now, if he drafts the kid from Missouri in the first round, or a Quinyon Mitchell falls, which I don't think he will, and he drafts him in the first round, yeah, that's fine. You know, they got a rookie deal. It's going to be pretty high money, obviously, for a first round pick, but nonetheless, you got 5 years, which is at least serviceable.
22 isn't 4. First round draft pick scales down. And you're right, first round draft pick. But then you get the added value of getting that fifth year option lock in. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about free agency till you get 6 years.
So it's a position they value, but to me, there's a big difference from 12 million to top of the market $20 million player, especially when you're getting that $20 million player to play in a totally different scheme than he was successful in. Let's be honest. Other than Brian Flores, there is not a more different scheme in the NFL. Maybe Wink Martindale, maybe Brian Flores, and then Steve Spagnuolo's scheme than what the Eagles played defensively. Am I wrong from that standpoint?
No.
It's a completely different sentiment of playing football.
There are two things you got to take into consideration: the type of zone, the type of defense you want to play as compared to the one the player is coming out of. And other than you, and maybe shame on the Dolphins for this, because they came in, swooped in, and took Vic Fangio away. They had to know that they were taking in Vic Fangio to play Fangio's zone defense, right? And they've got Xavier, Howard and Jaylen Ramsey there. So what were they thinking? Why would you bring in a guy who is zone concept at the yin yang for his defensive backs when you've got two of the good young press, well, not young, but two of the best press corners in the National Football League? Was that just a dumb hire by the Dolphins?
Maybe they think so. I mean, and then you add the money on top of it, making him the highest paid coordinator. And they were happy to get out of it. So clearly they thought they made a mistake after the season. Yeah. So and they went to Anthony Weaver, who's coming from the Baltimore system, which again would be, at least on paper, not to the degree of Kansas City or Flores or Martindale, but more of what would fit some of the players they have would be, I would say, the Baltimore method of defense.
And if it's a better fit, then that'll be good for the Dolphins. We'll see how the fit works out here with Fangio in Philadelphia. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. The Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. You know what we got to do. Come back and put a bow on this show.
Go to get your game